In January 2010, Sandra Bullock brought home a 3-month-old baby from New Orleans. She named him Louis. Today, that baby is a teenager who gives his Oscar-winning mother career advice. But here's what nobody expected. Louis looks exactly like someone from Sandra's past. Someone she hasn't spoken about in years. The photos are shocking. Same jawline, same eyes, same mannerisms. The similarity is so strong, even Sandra's closest friends had to ask uncomfortable questions. The truth is stranger than any movie plot. She was born on July 26, 1964, in Arlington, Virginia. Her mother was Helga Meyer, a German opera singer, and her father, John Bullock, worked as a voice coach and for the U.S. Army. But Sandra Bullock didn't grow up in America. When she was just a toddler, her family moved to Nuremberg, Germany. That's where she spent most of her childhood, learning the language, living around music, and absorbing European culture. Her mother's opera career meant the family kept moving. From one European city to another, Sandra grew up backstage at grand theaters, surrounded by singers, actors, and musicians. By the time she turned 5, Sandra wasn't just watching operas. She was in them. She joined children's choirs for live productions across Europe, performing in famous operas like The Magic Flute and Carmen. These weren't school plays. These were serious productions where she had to learn real music, rehearse with professionals, and follow strict schedules. She performed in German. She learned discipline early. While most kids her age were playing at home, Sandra was traveling with artists, sitting in orchestra pits, and standing under stage lights. But life wasn't always glamorous. When her family returned to the U.S. and settled in the Washington, D.C. area, the cultural shift hit her hard. She didn't fit in. Her classmates made fun of her frumpy German clothes. She felt out of place. They didn't understand her, and she didn't quite understand them. That early taste of rejection stayed with her, but it also taught her empathy. She knew how it felt to be the outsider in the room. German remained her first language. She spoke it at home, and she still speaks it fluently today. She even holds dual citizenship, both German and American. That mix of identities shaped how she looked at the world. It made her performances feel grounded and different. In a world of cookie-cutter Hollywood stars, she brought something no one else could. Authenticity, born from two worlds. Her childhood was filled with constant change. New cities, new schools, new friends. By age 10, she had already lived in several places across Germany and Austria. That constant moving taught her how to adapt, how to read a room, how to connect with people quickly. It also made her tough. You don't survive that kind of instability without learning how to stay steady. After high school, she enrolled at East Carolina University. She studied theater and got close to graduating. But in 1986, with just 3 credits left, she dropped out. She said school was boring. She didn't want a degree. She wanted New York. She moved there with no guarantee of anything. Just a dream. New York City wasn't kind. She had no money. She worked nights as a bartender, cocktail waitress, and coat checker. She'd finish a shift at 2 a.m. and be at acting class by 6. She lived in a small apartment with no heat, barely scraping by on ramen and coffee. But she never quit. That grind taught her humility. She saw how hard life could be. It made her tough and grateful, 2 things you can't fake on camera. In 1987, she landed her first movie role in a low-budget thriller called Hangmen. Nobody noticed it. Then came a few more straight-to-video films like Religion, Inc., and Who Shot Patakango? None of them were hits. Most are nearly impossible to find today. But Sandra wasn't embarrassed by them. She said they taught her what not to do and reminded her where she started. Things began to change in 1988, when she starred in a small off-Broadway play called No Time Flat. It wasn't a huge production, but one performance caught the attention of a talent agent. He signed her, and soon she got a role in the 1989 TV movie Bionic Showdown, The $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. She played a young scientist. It wasn't a lead role, but it was enough to get her noticed. In 1990, she finally landed a lead. NBC gave her the starring role in Working Girl, a sitcom based on the hit movie. She played Tess McGill, but the show didn't last. Critics didn't like it. The ratings dropped. After just 12 episodes, it was canceled. Still, it helped her get her foot in the door. And more importantly, it taught her that failure doesn't mean the end. When Sandra Bullock landed the role of Annie Porter in Speed back in 1994, it wasn't because she was the first pick. The character wasn't even meant for someone like her. Originally, Annie was written as a no-nonsense African-American paramedic. Halle Berry was the top choice, especially after her success in Boomerang, but she turned it down. She later joked that she didn't want to drive that bus and didn't see enough lines in the script. Other big names like Meryl Streep and Kim Basinger were also considered. Sandra wasn't on anyone's radar, but she showed up to the audition anyway. No fancy set, just a folding chair and a paper plate as her steering wheel. It was raw and unpolished, but something clicked. Her chemistry with Keanu Reeves, who also wasn't the studio's first choice, turned out to be electric. That spark would become the secret weapon behind the film's success. When Speed hit theaters on June 10, 1994, no one expected it to become a monster hit, but it did. The film made $350.4 million worldwide. It had a budget of just $30 to $37 million. That's nearly 10 times the return. Overnight, Sandra Bullock went from unknown to global star. And suddenly, Hollywood couldn't get enough of her. By the very next year, she was headlining romantic comedies. In 1995, While You Were Sleeping became another massive success. It earned $182 million globally. Her role got her nominated for a Golden Globe. And just like that, she wasn't just an action star. She was a rom-com queen, too. Audiences loved her. Studios knew she could sell tickets. She had officially become bankable. That same year, Sandra made a bold move. She started her own production company. Fortis Films was born in 1995 with her college friend Mark Brunetz. It was officially registered on April 16, 1996. The company ran operations out of both Austin, Texas, and West Hollywood. Her sister, Gesine Bullock Prado, acted as president for the first 5 years. Sandra wasn't just acting anymore. She was producing, negotiating, and shaping her own future. In 1997, she even signed a first-look deal with Warner Brothers, a major power play. Through Fortis Films, she backed projects she believed in. The company was behind Hope Floats in 1998, Miss Congeniality in 2000, and 2 Weeks' Notice in 2002. All three were box office hits. She even moved into TV, producing the sitcom George Lopez, which ran from 2002 to 2007. Very few actresses in the 90s were calling shots like that. But Sandra was setting a new standard. Still, not every decision was perfect. Speed 2, Cruise Control, came in 1997, and it was a mess from the start. Keanu Reeves didn't return, and Sandra was unsure. But Fox wanted her. They offered her $11 million, up from the $500,000 she made on the first film. But she didn't just say yes, she made a deal. She told the studio she'd do Speed 2 only if they funded her passion project, Hope Floats. Fox agreed. So she took the hit to make something she believed in. The gamble paid off for her, even if the movie flopped. Speed 2 cost as much as $160 million and earned just $164.5 million worldwide. Barely any profit. Critics ripped it apart. The slower pace, the weak plot, the missing Keanu, it all fell flat. The film won Worst Remake or Sequel at the Razzies. Sandra herself later called it an embarrassing experience and joked that only 5 people ever liked it. In December 2003, Sandra Bullock arranged a surprise garage tour for her godson, who was obsessed with a show called Monster Garage. Its host, Jesse James, built $300,000 custom motorcycles in Long Beach, California. That's where Sandra brought the boy, just to give him something unforgettable. But instead of just a garage visit, something else clicked. Sparks flew between Sandra and Jesse. She was America's sweetheart. He was a tattoo-covered biker with a reputation. Nobody expected that visit to turn into a relationship, let alone a full-blown marriage. But it did. And what started as a sweet gesture for a child became one of the most dramatic love stories in Hollywood history. The two got married on July 16, 2005, in Santa Barbara. Sandra was 41. Jesse came with baggage, 3 kids, and one of them, Sonny, was born to an adult film star, Janine Linda Mulder. Janine wasn't just a former porn actress, she was a convicted felon. By December 2009, after a long, messy custody fight and Janine's prison sentence for tax evasion, Sandra and Jesse won custody of Sonny. Sandra didn't just tolerate Jesse's children. She embraced them. She once said, "I married into children. I love those children. My concern and my love is no less than if I had that child biologically." That statement silenced a lot of critics. It proved she wasn't just a movie star playing house. She meant it. But the dream came crashing down. In March 2010, just days after Sandra won her first Oscar for The Blind Side, the headlines exploded. At least 5 women came forward, claiming they'd had affairs with Jesse James during the marriage. Tattoo models, strippers, even someone from his own shop. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a public spectacle. One woman, Michelle Bombshell McGee, sold her story, revealing texts, meetings, and details that flooded the tabloids. Jesse publicly admitted his guilt, but it was too late. The Oscar that should have been her high point became a reminder of what she lost. 10 days. That's all the time she got to celebrate. March 7th, 2010. Her big win. March 17th, the day the cheating scandal broke. Instead of basking in career success, she was drowning in heartbreak. Paparazzi camped outside her home. Her private life was ripped open. And to make things even harder, she was in the middle of adopting a baby boy, something she'd kept entirely secret. She had brought home Louis, just 3.5 months old, in January 2010. But now, she was adopting alone. On April 23, 2010, she filed for divorce. The process dragged on until June 28, 2012. All the while, she stayed quiet, focused on Louis. She once said, "How do you process grief and not hurt your child in the process?" She refused to let her pain touch her son's first year of life. That took strength most people never see. And somehow, through all the noise and scandal, she kept Louis's adoption a secret from the world. Even at the Oscars, she carried his lime green socks in her purse as a secret connection to him. Louis was born in New Orleans, a city that had haunted Sandra since Hurricane Katrina. She once said, "Something told me that my child was there." She felt pulled to that place, and once Louis arrived, the bond made sense. Her love for the city went beyond words. She donated hundreds of thousands to a local school, gave surprise speeches, and quietly became a part of the community. She didn't just adopt a child, she adopted a mission. She named him Louis, after jazz legend Louis Armstrong. His middle name, Bardo, had layers, after a German saint, a Buddhist concept about life and death, and even a nod to her late mother, whose middle name was Louise. Every part of the name meant something. It was music, It was history. It was healing. In 2015, Sandra adopted again. This time, a 2.5-year-old girl named Layla. Like Louis, Layla was from Louisiana. She had been through foster care and carried deep fears. Paparazzi tried to expose the adoption before it was finalized. At one point, they even followed them to the emergency room, but Sandra fought back. She protected her daughter the way any fierce mother would. She even took parenting classes to better understand trauma. And through it all, Louis helped Layla feel safe. Sandra said, "Louis spearheaded this whole journey." It was the middle of the night, June 8, 2014, when Sandra Bullock returned to her Bel Air mansion. She was exhausted, fresh from a long day, and ready to finally rest. After a shower, she slipped into bed, unaware that something unthinkable was about to happen. Her son Louis wasn't home that night. The nanny had taken him to her apartment nearby, thinking Sandra would be home late. That simple decision might have saved his life. At around 1:00 a.m., Sandra heard something. A noise, then another. She assumed it was coming from her workout room, but it kept moving closer. That's when it hit her. Someone was inside the house. Alone and frozen with fear, she locked her bedroom door, then bolted into the closet. She dialed 911 and whispered for help. Her mind raced. She had just watched episodes of 48 Hours and Dateline. She had seen stories like this. Only now, she was living one. She thought, "This doesn't end well." The terror in her voice was clear. She stayed hidden until police arrived. Every second felt like a lifetime. The man who had broken into her home was Joshua James Corbett. He had been stalking her for days. Police later said he was obsessed. He had stood outside her gates, watching her. He kept notes. That night, he jumped the fence, rang her doorbell for nearly 15 minutes, then slipped in through a sunroom door. In his backpack was a letter to Sandra, magazine clippings of her face, and a permit to carry a gun in Utah. Corbett owned 8 registered firearms. He didn't bring one that night, but he didn't need to. His words were disturbing enough. In his notebook, he wrote things like, "You are my wife by law, the law of God, and you belong to me." He even mentioned her son. After that night, Sandra wasn't the same. She later said she was unraveling. She developed severe PTSD. Sometimes, all it took was looking left out of a car window, and she'd start crying. It happened again and again. There was no warning, no logic. The trauma was buried deep. As a single